Okay guys, we are wrapping up 2024 and I wanted to share with you all of my favorite reads this year. I am going to do these in order. I am actually going to start with my least favorite of my favorite. So take this with a grain of salt. I absolutely adored every single one of these books. I am going to start with Apprentice and Assistant to the Villain. I am counting these as a duology, even though there is a third book coming. I have my one little bookmark here. What did I love about this book? Probably one quote in particular. Fear usually meant you were standing on the edge of something new, something self-altering, something potentially good. Fear was not something she would shy away from ever again. Apparently I really like that. But anyway, I absolutely loved Assistant and Apprentice to the Villain. I thought they were incredibly funny. I thought they were very witty. I will say that this is my lowest of the 5-star reads, if that makes sense, only because the slow burn in both of these books was burning. By the second book, I didn't feel like in a good way. I really had hoped that there would have been a little bit more development between the two main characters of the book, but that doesn't take away from how fun these were, how much I love the characters. I will say Evie, the female main character, has become one of my favorite FMCs of all time, so she is definitely top 3. So I love these books, and this was a 5-star read for me. My second on the list is Bride by Ali Hazlewood. This was actually my first Ali Hazlewood read, which is funny because she's not primarily a fantasy writer. She writes contemporary romance. Safe to say, I went down the Ali Hazlewood rabbit hole after this. I think I own every single one of her books and have listened to one of her audios. Love her writing. I love that she is a woman in STEM, so am I, so I relate heavily to her, and I love that she makes each one of her female main characters a STEM figure as well. Misery, the female main character in this book, has also become one of my top 5 female main characters, and I just thought this was really funny and witty. Is it high in fantasy? No. That was okay for me. I wasn't expecting a deep fantasy read. This wasn't Lord of the Rings. This was just a fun, vibey read. And the slow burn in here actually was eating me up. I am a slow burn girly. I read this book on my way to work and I had to tell my husband, I was like, how can I go into work like this? Me feeling all of the things. I really liked it. 5 stars. Third is the Two Twisted Crowns duology. I rated these books together. I still felt like they should have been one large book, but I understand this is way more intimidating than this. I thought these were incredibly unique. I loved the magic system. I loved every single character in these books. Was dark academia, gothic vibes, and honestly, that is some of my favorite. Storyline was really cool. To this day, I have not read a magic system quite as unique as this one, and I just thought that these were fantastic. Very easy to follow along. It's good for introduction to fantasy, and it was just fantastic. Up next on the list is actually a recent read. So coming in at number 4 from the bottom to the top is From Blood and Ash. I absolutely inhaled this book. This is very high fantasy, contrary to all the other ones that I just went through. This is a book that you want to theorize in, that you want to dive into, that you are absorbing. There is info dumping throughout the entire book. I thought it was really well done, and this had me literally on the edge of my seat the entire time. I read this, I think, in 2 days because I just could not put it down. I loved the storyline and I just want to continue the series. I will say that I read the second book and unfortunately it does not make it onto this list because I didn't enjoy the writing as much, but I'm still very much invested in the story and I can't wait to read the third book in the year of 2025. We are really getting into my favorites now. We are going to talk about this series, the Ever King, the Ever Queen, and the Misty. Can I even hold all of these up at the same time? Probably not. Let's talk about the Ever King, okay? First of all, this is definitely my top 5 MMC. I absolutely love Eric Bloodsinger. If you have not met him, you need to. He is morally black. This is not a morally gray MMC, and if you know, those are my favorite. These two books go together as a duology, and I thought that they were fantastic. I was not as invested in the female main character, but I didn't not like her. She doesn't make my top 5. This was giving Pirates of the Caribbean with Faye. I don't know anything about boats. I don't know anything about anything. I know that there's a wheel that steers the ship, and that is about it. This was so easily digestible. fictional, even though it was a pirates type of book. And so if you don't know anything about the sea either, that's okay. You're gonna learn, and you're gonna realize that you love the sea because you love Eric. I gave the Ever Queen a 4.5 stars. Overall together, these were 5-star reads. The Ever King was amazing. The reason I didn't give the Ever Queen a 5-star was just because there was a little bit of a lull in the middle of the book. They weren't perfect by any means, but they were a vibe, and I absolutely loved these books for 2024. I just want to reread them. Then there is The Mist Thief. This is the 3rd book in the series, and I will say that this one didn't hit home for me as much, but it was still fantastic, and I just love LJ Andrews' style of writing, so I highly recommend this series. Coming in at 6 on my list, I don't have the physical copy, but I read my first Keri Lake book this year called Anathema. I'm gonna put it right here. I went back and forth on whether or not I liked it more than this series right here. I might have to switch it. I might like the series more. But either way, they were just so close together because I really loved Keri Lake's style of writing. She was also giving very gothic, very eerie vibes. Not scary. I don't like horror, but I like spooky. And this book completely delivered. The slow burn felt so good. Zavander, the male main character, easily one of my top 5. I keep feeling like I'm saying top 5 a lot, so how many top 5s do I have? The ending, however, was a little weird for me. That was the only thing that lost me on it, so I think I gave the book a 4.5 stars, but it is not a standalone. It is going to be part of a series, so I am hoping that the next book will really deliver, but I am invested. I will definitely be reading the next one, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Coming up at number 7? House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas. I got the UK version because I went to both England and Scotland this year. I think I got this in England. This book was amazing. It made me feel all the things. I loved the characters in this book. The slow burn was also so amazing. I know I keep talking about slow burns, but as you can tell, that is my favorite style of writing. I love yearning and angst. This was giving that, and I loved the ending. This packed an emotional punch. This had action. Honestly, this had everything of a complete book. I'll not speak on the rest of the series in this video because it did not even make my top reads of 2024. I really did not enjoy the 2nd or the 3rd book that much, but this book, however, was wonderful. Top tier. Coming in at number 8, Serpent and the Wings of Night, Ashes and the Star-Cursed King, and the 6 Scorched Roses novella. I loved this series so much. Aurea, the female main character, actually became my #1 female main character of all time. Serpent and the Wings of Night starts off with games and trials, so this book is very action-packed right from the beginning, but there is beautifully woven character development throughout this entire book. I loved how conflicted I was about every single character. It also ends with a fantastic bang that keeps you on the edge of your seat and immediately makes you want to read the next one. I should just move my books out of the way, right? Next one was a little bit more slower paced. This one was focused mainly on character development, but I was here for it. I think there was a single flaw for me in this duology. The plot did get a little weird in Ashes and the Star-Cursed King, but I don't think that took away from the story. I finished them and instantly wanted to reread them. And then just to give us some more icing on top of the cake, Carissa then gave us this little novella called 6 Scorched Roses. My favorite novella. When have you ever heard somebody really brag about a novella? They're great, but they're short. They're usually meant to just bridge in between the series. This was a fantastic completed story on the side characters. 5 out of 5 stars. It's such a short read. I finished it, wanted to reread it immediately. It gave me all of the butterflies in my stomach. We have another Ali Hazlewood book. As you know, she has become one of my favorite writers, and this is actually out of the fantasy realm. This is The Love Hypothesis, coming in at number 3. I really loved this book. I thought that the characters were so relatable. This is totally predictable, totally cheesy, totally rom-com, and my only gripe with this book is that somebody has not turned it into a movie. I'm pretty sure I read this whole book in one day because I didn't want to put it down. This is centered, the female main character works in a lab. I think she's doing her graduate program and she's fake dating a professor. I will probably read this again every year, at least once a year. Her banter and wittiness is just so good. And I think I also felt really connected to this story because I was an engineering major in college, and I just really, really related to the female main character in this book. Loved it. Coming in at number 2. This is technically, I just want to put a disclaimer, this is not a book, this is a fan fiction. I was gifted the binded version by one of my followers on Instagram, and I do have a physical copy, but this is Manacled. This is a fan fiction. She is thick. Wow, this book was heavy. This book was dark. This book was amazing. I still think about this. It altered my brain chemistry. If you don't know, this is a book centered around Harry Potter, but with a different ending where Voldemort is actually winning the war at Hogwarts. Hermione and Draco have a romance in here that is just, there are just no words. I loved it. It was so emotionally provoking. When you read a conventional book, you typically get fast forwarded a lot of the plot. And by what I mean by that is it doesn't take you through the day to day, because then you would end up with a book like this. But with fan fiction, there are no rules. And so you got to live through every single day, play by play with these characters. And I was just so invested in Hermione, in her mind. And this was such a beautiful story. If you haven't checked it out, I highly recommend it. Finally, coming in at top 1. Number 1, 5 and a snap 5, Roman Empire, Throne of Glass. So I'm only showing you one book, but obviously I am referring to the entire series. These were my favorite reads of 2024. I think about these characters every day. This quickly became my adult version of Harry Potter. I was a Harry Potter kid, and I've been obsessed with Harry Potter for years. And I remember waiting for the books to release when I was a kid, and I never thought that I would feel all of those feels again for a series until I read Throne of Glass. I loved that Sarah J. Maas took us through every single one of these characters' journeys. Kingdom of Ash, the last book in the series, also altered my brain chemistry. Lorcan is my number 1 book boyfriend of all time, and he exists in the series. Him and Alide are my favorite couple. All I've done the entire year of 2024 is think about how I want to reread this. Now the TBR keeps looking at me and yelling at me, so I will not be doing that, but let me tell you something. This was amazing. A lot of people criticize books 1 through 3. They say that they couldn't get into them. I will tell you right now, I experienced nothing but dopamine release for every single one of these books. I think they just got better with time, but I like them from day one. It starts off young adult. It gets a little bit more adult as it continues. Chef's kiss. Those were all of my reads for 2024. Stick around for my worst reads of 2024. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk.